Stefan Mychajliw joins us, Erie County Comptroller. Stefan, look, either this is wildly inaccurate appointees, she's still teaching. How is this even possible? What's happening here? And why is nobody looking into this? It's crazy to me. Dr. Gale Burstein allegedly still works at the Jacobs School of Medicine at UB. Is she still teaching there? Does she have 2 jobs? Isn't it easy to find out how many hours she's doing at other places? Should there be a cap and a limit to how much you're working as a county executive or your political appointees? Is Dr. Gale Burstein working harder and longer than Mark Poloncarz? Stefan Mychajliw joins us, Erie County Comptroller. Stefan, look, either this is wildly inaccurate and your numbers are off, or there is absolutely no outrage left in Erie County, Democrat or Republican.
David, good morning. The numbers are correct every single quarter that we've released them ever since the beginning of the COVID crisis last year. You know, the Poloncarz administration does not dispute the numbers, and it's my understanding they wear it like a badge of honor, all the overtime that they collect for their political employees. And we actually called New York City because we didn't think the numbers could be this high at the beginning of the COVID crisis. And keep in mind, it's Bill de Blasio, super liberal. We said, what are you paying your political people in overtime? And they refused to give us the data. And then finally they called us and said, the data doesn't exist because we don't pay our political people overtime in New York City. And so Erie County is one of the very few that allows political patronage employees who are salaried to collect overtime. They're stating, the Poloncarz administration, the federal guidelines allow them to spend COVID dollars on this. But I've always made the argument, just because you can do it does not mean that you should. And so,
well, even after last year and the outright, what did she end up making with overtime last year? Was it $150,000?
Yeah, it was very significant. I think her entire salary was even close to $300,000 when you combine overtime and the base salary. And you have to remember, you know, taxpayers are going to pay that bill for years to come because that's factored into her 3 highest years for her New York State pension. And so it's going to be paid for by taxpayers for decades, not just...
This is disgusting. I mean, what type of person, while the rest of the region is struggling, they're shut down, people can't afford Christmas presents, they've gone bankrupt, they're being kicked out of their homes. And here we have a government appointee racking up more money in 2021, Stefan, than at any 6-month period during the height of COVID.
And you have to remember, this is more than what most hardworking employees and workers across Erie County make an entire year in their salary, let alone in overtime. And I think that's why people are so upset about it. But at the end of the day, it's really up to the federal government when it comes to either an investigation or a review of how these dollars are spent, because these are federal dollars. It's no different than the October surprise storm in 2006, when 7 years later the feds came back and said, hey, by the way, you shouldn't have spent the money the way you did. Erie County owes us $50 million. So the only recourse we have is the federal government when it comes to a review or investigation. But these numbers are absolutely positively correct. The Poloncarz administration has never disputed them, and I think they're proud to take advantage of the system and collect this kind of overtime.
So let me get this right. What does it constitute for her to work overtime? How many hours does she have to log in to actually be able to say, I worked an overtime hour?
Well, here's the crazy part, is that the county actually tried to cut down on it by stating that employees must work 200 hours and collect comp time first before you can earn a single penny of overtime. So for the first 6 months of the year, Dr. Gale Burstein technically earned $85,000 in overtime, but that does not include the $12,000 and 200 hours in comp time that she's racked up, and she can cash that in at the end of the year. So if she cashes in the money, the actual total for the first 6 months of the year is $97,000. It all depends on whether or not she's going to take two.
So she actually this is $3,000 away from $100,000 for 6 months of work in 2021 when Stefan, maybe I'm wrong, Erie County Comptroller Stefan Mychajliw, Our numbers are the lowest since the pandemic. Hospitalization rates amongst the lowest. And let's be honest, no one's getting a vaccine anymore. We're giving away beers and wings and you name it. No one's getting vaccines. So what is this person doing to earn $100,000 in overtime in 6 months?
We have to remember the health commissioner volunteered to distribute vaccines on weekends and then bill the county for overtime. So I believe anytime an email is checked, a phone call is made, whether it's in or out of the office, at home, anywhere, the county taxpayers are being billed for overtime. And again, when you look at the numbers across New York State, we've done reports. Erie County by far exceeds any other county in New York State, to the point where New York City doesn't even give their political people overtime. I think that's an important point to make, too. A lot of political appointees are salaried. You know exactly what the salary is when you accept it and when you work. Salaried political appointees should not be entitled to overtime. But the Polling Cars administration feels as though they've found a federal loophole that allows them to spend federal COVID dollars this way, and they're like pigs at the trough. You know, they never met.
I mean, literally, there's no other word to describe this but piggish. And again, I don't know how anyone... Now, do you, in Erie County, is it legal for people to work a second job? For example, Gale Burstein is, Dr. Gale is, listed as a professor at the Jacob School of Medicine at UB. So could she theoretically be teaching and have the job as Erie County Health Commissioner?
Yeah, it's my understanding the answer to that is yes, because, myself, the county executive, according to the charter, we're not allowed to have outside income. That's stated in the law. And there's other, depending on whatever union contracts, those union employees have to be really careful about having outside income as well. But it's my understanding that there's no limitations when it comes to the health commissioner and what hours she's putting in for other work, whether it's the Jacob School or private practice.
So who has the power to shut this whole practice down? Does the county executive have the ability to say, enough's enough, the whole region is suffering, why? I'm not going to have people in the Polling Cars administration making in 6 months what hardworking people throughout COVID, the people that were, essential that had to work, 85 grand, 100 grand for 6 months of work. Who in this area wouldn't sign up for that?
Mark Polling Cars has the power to stop it. And he's not only not stopping it, he's blowing right through the so-called loophole that allows them to do it. The county executive could set the policy to say, look, you're all salaried. You know what the salary was coming into the job that you took, and no one is getting overtime, period. But the county executive is making sure that his political appointees and patronage hires are lining their pockets because of a crisis. And just because the loophole exists doesn't mean you've got to take a semi-truck and drive through it and line your pockets on the backs of taxpayers. And that's exactly what they're doing. The county executive could have not even implemented this at the beginning of COVID. But that's a policy he put in place, and now only the federal government, because these are federal dollars, can come in and determine whether or not it's appropriate.
Now, so as comptroller, you can't even audit what because they're billing the federal government. It doesn't fall within the jurisdiction of Erie County tax dollars or New York State tax dollars. Therefore, you can't audit the overtime. You could only audit what they make during their regular salary.
And that's exactly what we've done. We've documented every single hour. We submit the hours to the legislature, and to the federal government. And it's up to them. Again, I use that example of the October surprise storm. They came back 7 years later and conducted an audit to determine, from their determination, that the county did not document the way they spent FEMA dollars. The same thing could happen. It just may not be tomorrow. It all depends on the federal timetable. But I've done everything in my power. What I can as comptroller and the watchdog is document it, report it to the public, and let the federal government make a decision whether or not it's appropriate.
Unbelievable. Well, without you doing that, no one would have known this information. So I give you a tremendous amount of credit. Stefan Mychajliw, Erie County Comptroller, thank you for your time today. He put it out on Facebook. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it. I looked at the date. I'm like, I'm looking at an old Stefan Mychajliw video. This can't be this morning. There's no way. I know the man doesn't age, so it could have been a year ago. I kept looking at it and thinking, wait a second. Wait a minute. He's talking about 2021. In the year of our Lord, he's talking about this year, the first 6 months of this year. This is revolting.